Start recording. All right. We're going to go ahead and jump in and kind of get started. Some people will jump in and out, and a lot of people catch online. There's a whole collection out of New Zealand that watch these because they're like, it's the middle of the night for us. And so when I post them up on YouTube, they pick them up afterwards. And so I hear from them. So to Dana and some of the others who those, thanks for jumping in. Hey, everybody. Good to see you guys and sticking with me again. Some of you guys were there for all of the StrengthsFinder workshop sessions we did. And as we've kind of said to some of the end of StrengthsFinder, wanted to step in and offer up just a kind of a next level. And one of the things that I'm calling this is we're calling this digital leadership, because the next 4 weeks are kind of more about continuing. Some of us are more in quarantine than others. How do we step in and kind of go to this next level as a group? My buddy, Danny Kim, you'll see him in the top left-hand corner. He's up there. So hi, Danny. Danny is going to tag team with me. So Danny is one of my oldest friends, and Danny and I worked together for a number of years in San Diego. Danny is one of the guys I trust the most when it comes to StrengthsFinder and organizational consulting. And I asked, because it's early in the morning out there, if he would give me an hour of his time every week for the next 4 weeks to tag team. So thanks for agreeing to tag along, Danny. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure. It's great to be here.
So over for the next 4 weeks, we're going to kind of kick in for 1 hour every week, and love to have you guys interact and play as much as you feel comfortable. But we're going to cover some different topics over the next 4 weeks. This week, though, I wanted to start off kind of talking about vision. And I wanted to lay out what vision looks like as individuals. And when it comes to vision is going to be really critical. But my thought was that I would kind of lay off a couple ideas, and I wanted to give you some exercises to play with. But I'd love to get your feedback and thoughts. And so we've got the chat going as well. I mean, Katie, if you would keep tag teaming with us, you're great at playing facilitator, if you don't mind, as questions and comments come out. But I've asked Danny just to kind of jump in live as we go. And I'm going to share my iPad, and you guys now at this point are used to my scribbles. So the scribbling can help. Let's see. Sometimes, let's see. Open system. Oh, I'm on a new Mac, you guys. So forgive me. I'm not quite as set up as there you go. Yes, I'll find a way to pay Katie. Okay. I will. I swear, Sean, I will. Oh, 1 second. There we go. So, sorry. The system is not excited about this. New Mac. 1 second.
Mike, while you set that up, do you want me to share a little bit about my role right now?
Please, why don't you go ahead and do that?
Thank you. Thanks. As Mike said, I love working with him, and he has taught me everything I know about strengths, and I still use it to this day. The last several years, I've been doing some organizational consulting for a small boutique consulting firm. And then more recently, I'm the director of people and culture at Raindrop, Jessica, as we were talking. And it's been an incredible role. We have grown tremendously, making great products, advertising and branding, all sorts of products. And we've gone through some interesting transitions, because I think one of the things that we value at our culture is that we like being together. And so recently, we've had to dismantle all of that. We've actually had several layoffs, et cetera, and that's been really challenging for us. And so the question that we're asking is, how do we keep the Raindrop culture intact in a digital environment, right? And so for me, why I decided to jump on with Mike was I'm really curious about what you all are learning, because I'm a student of technology as well. And so I'm more curious about what you are experiencing as a way for me to understand. And I look forward to just learning with you rather than me being the expert. So thank you for allowing me to jump in. Thanks, Mike.
I appreciate that. Thanks for kind of giving people context. And again, it's always helpful to hear from each other as well. And so don't feel free to unmute as you need to. That's always I prefer people that are like, unless you have a real issue where you're like, oh gosh, I absolutely need to mute. Having you guys kind of react and respond is going to be key. Before we dive into vision, one of the first things I want to talk about you this week. And so this ends up being about you, because when it comes to digital leadership, we start from us. We start from this place of being able to say, What is it? What's my own life? I always say your leadership and your influence will never be healthier than you are. Basically when people think of leadership, there's this old, I don't know if it was John Maxwell, who I'm not exactly the biggest fan of, but I do like his phrase, is that leadership is equivalent to your influence. Yeah. And so the influence you have on those around you is basically your leadership, whether you're in a leadership role or not. And so you're constantly influencing people. And so much like the wake of a boat, our influence looks like our wake. And so the wake is never healthier than the boat. So if you really want to make sure that you have a healthy wake, this boat must be healthy. So have you ever worked for someone or been in a relationship with or being led by someone that you knew themselves were not the healthiest? They weren't at the best of themselves. They weren't, some area of their life wasn't at its very best. And so when it comes to actually starting and influencing well, it starts with being healthy yourself, because a healthy individual creates a healthy, for lack of a word, boat, which produces the right wake, which is the influence, which is your leadership, right? Very simple idea. And so that healthy spot, there's a great book called The 3 Laws of Performance. 3 Laws of Performance. It's a simple book. But what you'll find, one of the laws that really stands out to me is law number 1 they talk about. Law number 1, which is that our performance always equals our perspective. And so basically, that's my basic kind of summary of it, is that between the performance we want in our lives, between the results we want in our lives, between us and the results is this perspective. And our Strengths Finder is one piece of this perspective. But also our health is another part of this. Our perspective is going to be comprised of your Strengths Finder results, your mindset, and your health. Okay. And so our Strengths Finder, so between us and the thing we want, exists all this stuff. Our Strengths Finder, our mindset, and our health. So this all sits in here. And so many times people will focus in on understanding their Strengths Finder themes. They're going to focus in on what it is whether or not they have strategic. And again, how can I make decisions quickly? What problems am I solving with my restorative? Am I growing with my developer? Am I focused in on understanding my connectedness and how I see the world from a perspective? But first of all, we need to start though ultimately with what we want. And this want piece is the part that I really want to be able to focus in on for people. Is this week, do you have an understanding of what you want? And when it comes to vision, one of the biggest challenges we face is that people begin to think that their Strengths Finder themes determine whether or not they have vision. When we think of vision, we think that it is our themes that determine whether or not we're visionaries. And so, for example, give me a thumbs up on chat, or give me a clap if you have futuristic. Does anybody have futuristic? No futuristic. Sean Wise, he's like, no futuristic for me. Nobody? No futuristic? When people talk about vision, well, Christina does. That's right. Christina has futuristic. We've had this conversation. When it comes to futuristic, that's a natural piece that they say, oh, there's vision there. But in general, we all need to have vision for our life. We need to have vision of what we want. And one of the things I want to focus in on is vision for actually a total kind of well-being. Mm-hmm. And so when we think about ultimately, how do we start with a vision for health for ourselves as a leader, kind of focused on ourselves this week, I want to give you some places and areas for you to think about. I want to do a little exercise right now that'll help you give a vision for yourself. Okay. And these you can find actually in Gallup's book called Wellbeing. Gallup's book, Wellbeing. And in the research, in fact, Gallup now every April does a global well-being study that they have agreed to conduct for 100 years. So they're constantly measuring well-being around the world. They claim a 92% sampling of the, and they think that these 5 areas represent the categories of well-being that matter the most to people in the world right now. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk us through each one of the 5, and there's 5 of them, okay? I'm going to describe them one by one. What I'd like you to do is think about your own life, and here's the deal. I'm going to describe it, and then I'm going to ask you to rank yourself in that one category. And what you're going to do is you're going to rank yourself on a ladder of 10 rungs. Okay? Imagine a ladder that has 10 rungs on it. Okay? 10 means thriving. This is 10. This is 1/0. Thriving. Okay? This is 1. This is suffering. Okay? This, surviving. Surviving, right? Okay. Surviving. We're going to go through each one of these 5, and I want you to put yourself on a rung on each one of on a ladder for each one of these 5. Give me a thumbs up if you understand what I'm saying. Give me a thumbs up. Cool. Sweet. Here's what we're going to do. So here's the first one. The first section is purpose. Okay. And here's the statement for purpose. Do you love what you do every day?
And as you guys think about it, feel free to maybe chat it in, and I can call out some of the numbers. That'd be great.
Yeah. So think about this. Do you love what you do every day? Think about the majority. Think about the things, now not just from an idea, think about from a scale of what you take your time doing. Like you may have a great title that you love on a job, but right now you're spending all your time focused on emails or whatever, kind of however that plays out. And so on a scale of from suffering, surviving, this is gonna be about 5, to thriving, where are you on purpose? What do you got, Danny? A couple of those?
I got some 7s, a couple of 5s, a lot of 5s, a couple of 8s. Todd and Marcia, Matt 6, Brendan 6. That's a good point, Mike. I love the idea that you're saying, like the difference between the job title, like the aspirational, what you could be doing every day versus what you're actually doing every day. And especially now in the season, as we talk about digital leadership, some of our quote unquote job descriptions are kind of being dismantled, right? I think about my role as director of people and culture. It's like, I can't literally physically be around people that I need to be around.
Yeah.
You know, the in-between, the passing the hallway, the turn of the face, the being late to meetings. Now it's a digital screen and people can basically just pretend like they're great, you know? And so that's an interesting conversation. And I see some 5, 6. I love Sean. Thanks. My job has become spreadsheets.
Totally.
Some people love that. And some people are like, dude, that's the worst of me, you know?
But what's interesting, even to your point, Dean, and this is that area that talks about using our strengths every day, though when it comes to using strength, they would say, the part of your job that's your strengths is the part that makes the rest of the job tolerable. Yeah. Pre-work from home and post-work from home world, you may find that a job that you would have been like, wow, I'm thriving in, the exact same job, the realities of that job now might be suddenly a 4 instead of a 10.
Yeah, right. Because of the limitations, because of the new culture that we're creating, because you feel like you're handcuffed, you have a loss of autonomy, less visibility. Absolutely. That's definitely something to think about.
And this is one other piece too. Remember when we talk Strengths Finder themes, they talk about strengths, your strengths are in the transactional work you're doing. It's in the actual day-to-day part of your job. It's not in the title of your job. Something you're doing is a fit for you if the transactional elements, the things you actually do in your day, that's the part that's in the strength. So on a ladder of 1 to 10, where are you? We got Danny.
Yeah, that's. I just thought about this too as you were talking, Mike, because what's interesting, and I'd love to hear some thoughts on this, whether now or later, but it feels like sometimes in a digital remote working environment, the transactional takes more precedence because that's the thing you can see. That's the output. Does that make sense? And that could be good, but people can overcompensate by doing more emails, by having more, doing having more projects being checked off the box, which actually can lead to a lot of burnout and just so much where we're overcompensating.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the people on my team, they literally don't want to let go of projects because they're afraid that if they do, they'll lose their job. So there's that stress too, right? It's like, I don't want to let go of anything, because when in reality they need to delegate, they need to figure out how to share with the team, they need to figure out how the team can support. So that's an interesting, complex dynamic that I'm experiencing right now, where people are going, I need to do more to overcome, to show my value to my organization.
Anybody feeling more pressure to be transactional in these day and age? You guys feel more? Yeah. Christina, give me a head nod. A couple of you. Mm-hmm. Like the pressure to be more transactional and be less kind of meta, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah. And less strategic, right? Like we want output, because at the end of the day, you want to say, I did this, versus I thought about this, and you saw me working around, you were around me, you saw me thinking, but you can't do that anymore. I can't see where you were, what you were doing. So that becomes a unique dynamic.
And so within some of these pieces, so purpose, what's your score for purpose? You give yourself a number for that. That's going to be the top one. Next, love. Love, or as we say, relationships. And the question of this is, the statement is, do I have loving relationships in my life? Do I have loving relationships in my life? It is not about just romantic love. It is, do I have the relational piece that I need? Do I feel the connection to the loving relationships in my life? And this is a question that even right now is a really difficult question for people, but it's a key factor of saying, you need to have a vision of how much am I focusing in on my relationships as much as I focus in on purpose and jobs.
Great numbers here. 9.9. That's like almost on the 10th ladder, right? Like teetering on the 10th ladder. 10. Awesome. 7s.
Yeah.
Somebody misses me. Thanks, Brendan.
They miss you.
We were college roommates, by the way. So
yeah, Brendan was Danny's
I do miss
roommate.
him. Yes.
In the midst of this, it's understanding that you need to have but here's this other idea. Not only do we need to have a vision of purpose or career, for lack of a better phrase, in our life, you need to have a vision for relationships in your life. Is that Gallup has found that when it comes to overall well-being, we need to have a vision for what is the relationships like? How am I functioning in these relationships? What does that look like? And if it's important for me, am I putting effort and thought and time into it, right? Because between what we want and us is this perspective, our strengths, our mindset, and our health.
Yeah, it's interesting, Mike. I think, when as you talk about that, there's a unique pivot that happens as you get a little older, like in your 20s and younger adolescence. Your relationships are a factor of who is around you. Just like,
somebody,
osmosis. Like, it's just like, okay, well, you're sitting next to me in my math class, versus as we get older, you have to begin to think, what parts of my life are need input, and what parts of my life are output? Like, what kinds of relationships are life-giving to me that I'm going to actually invest into? And there can only be so many. Like, Facebook is a lie, right? 1,000 friends is not true. Like that doesn't happen. Like, followers are different than friends. You know what I mean? And so I think that the reality is, like, we have to be thinking, like, how am I investing in how do I spend more time, make more calls, do the kinds of things that actually build that connective tissue. And I think that's, we all need it. And it looks like there's some great numbers here, according to the people here. So thank you.
Yeah. There's this whole element of, we talk in my book, Extraordinary, in the section on permission, I talk about the fact that what ends up happening is as we age past 25 and the prefrontal cortex of our brain kicks in and we become more logical, it requires more intentionality, because now we consider, what do relationships, how do they impact my life?
Yes.
Versus in those first years, it is based on proximity. Post 25, it is based on what's the impact of relationships. And so it requires significant more intentionality to build new relationships after 25. And so that's a big piece. That's great.
Right.
Purpose. So so on the ladder, there you are. Next one, financial. Do I have the money? Do I have the resources? I would say, do I have the resources to meet all of my need, pay all my bills, pay bills and meet needs? I would say pay bills and meet my needs. And so when it comes to this, there's a couple different ways to think about this question, right? The ways to make this happen are, am I spending less than I make? That's the key. That's a simple framework of this. Am I spending less than I make? And so that can be, well, I'm going to spend less, or it can mean I'm going to make more. There's different areas and ways to think about this, but financial well-being ended up in Gallup's research of overall well-being. This ended up being a critical question. And in fact, there's a lot of great research. Daniel Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize for economics as a psychologist, part of his whole finding is in the fact that there is a certain amount of money that makes us, have you guys heard this phrase?
Yes.
$70,000 is the key to happiness. Mm-hmm. There's a great TED talk on it, on how they found that people express much higher levels of well-being if they made more, the average family of four, making more than what is now basically $75,000 a year versus less. Okay. And the fact that there is a well-being connection to having all your basic needs met. And so when it comes to financial, you can achieve that by spending less, you can achieve that by making more, but this is more about how you're managing your financial world. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And in fact, overall well-being and employee engagement is impacted. This specifically, Gallup has found that in down economies, employee engagement at work goes down.
Yeah. Because
people feel like they have less options, but the pressure to make sure they have the money they need goes up. So while the pressure for money goes up and their options go down, they feel more stuck in their day-to-day work. And so employee engagement, even in jobs that they have, goes down quite a bit.
It's interesting. This one definitely is the most spread for those that are sharing, from 5s to 9s. And there's two thoughts that come to my mind. I think that's really interesting research, Mike. And I'm curious to think, and you all can be thinking, what are the kind of factors that may be stressing out my financial outlook? That makes sense. I mean, I have myself included was furloughed for a season, and there were several other people that around you, whether that it's your manager or somebody else that is on the edge, on the fence, having phone calls with folks that are getting laid off just because of the financial crisis. And so that's going to be an interesting moment in history. And there's going to be a layer of PTSD moving back into the workforce, because some people are just like, I just need my job. I need to hold on, going back to that whole transactional piece of purpose. So we're at this, we are going to be in a season of survival in some way. So I'd be curious to see kind of as the weeks shake out, as you think about your own financial outcome. Now, some of you might be okay with some backbone, some savings, but the other piece that is going to be interesting is how are all the other variables impacting us, right? All the businesses around us, not just your own business, but those around you. Everyone is being impacted somehow. The other piece that I want to think that comes to mind, Mike, as you're talking, is that the financial piece is actually, sometimes it has to do with the perspective of who is around you, if that makes sense. Like in my line of work, I've realized that people are not so concerned about the dollar figure. It's more about what am I making in relationship to my colleagues? So that's an interesting piece, because it's like, we're such social beings. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's just what it is. If you're driving a Honda Civic and your colleague drives up in a Mercedes Benz, you're like, dude, what's he making? But if he's driving a Civic too, then you're like, we're good, right? And it's an interesting reality that financial is also kind of an aspect of it, is what is your net worth compared to other people around you? And I think that's an interesting thing to consider and think about, because I know for me, at least, just being vulnerable, like I will feel less than if I know that I'm around people that make more than me, versus people that I make more. And then I'm like, oh, I feel great. I have everything that I need. So it's an interesting thing that you have to be mindful of as you think about, what's my vision? What do I need? What does my family need? Versus like, what's everyone else making? And that makes me feel better or more valuable.
Yeah. Our perspective on money, our perspective on those pieces is going to be key. And what's interesting here, especially in this time, what's funny is that for a lot of people, consumerism has become a coping mechanism. So spending makes us feel better. Spending makes us, but what's interesting is I would love to know the research in a situation like we're in now around the world, where we have such tightening financial experiences. What is interesting is that actually probably one of the healthiest things we could do, even more than purpose, is find a way to get peace of mind about having more margin financially. Is that wise financial decisions in this moment become even more critical than us going, oh, gee, do I love my job? I'm more concerned that you have the ability to pay your bills right now. And so what are choices you can make to buy you that peace? Because I think we will start to make money drives panic. And Christina can tell you this, like, this is her genius, is her ability to understand how your dreams and your money match. Like, that's what she does for a living professionally. Nice. And so that understanding of those pieces is going to be is that the connection between my self-assurance and my well-being and my happiness and my money is clear. And so that's a big piece there.
Sean made a great comment. He said that I just want to call out. He said, there's a certain level of stress that gets put into the system when we have expectations or a lifestyle that we have to maintain, i.e. a mortgage, student loans, kids, schooling, et cetera, et cetera. So that is an interesting thing. I think that's a good equation, Mike, what we make to what we need and what we spend. In the way I budget, and my wife and I budget, is we have like needs versus wants, categories, because sometimes those get blurred. It's like, I absolutely need this new iMac. You know what I mean? Like, that's a need, or is it food and shelter and paying my utility bills? You know what I mean? So,
so it's good. So we've talked about, your purpose. So kind of like we're doing well-being here. So we got purpose, we've got love, we got relationships, we got finances, now physical. Okay. Do I have the energy to get through my day? Do I have enough energy to basically do what I need to do? Do I have energy to get through my day? Now, this is just kind of one statement, but think about physical in general, like your physical health. Are you heading in the right direction with your fitness, with your ability to take care of yourself? Are you prone to disease? Is that a possibility? Is that a challenge for you? Do you have pains and things like that? And so this again is something, I'm about to turn 46. This is a different question for me now than when I was 30. But at the same time, there's times where I wouldn't make the connection between, my choices today will impact my ability to be 90 and still hiking in Patagonia. Like, these are different things. Is that, how do I connect them? And so when you'd say right now, think about energy. That's why it says energy, and this is not about being skinny or fat. This is about having the ability to get through your day, pick up your kids, take walks, do the things that give you health emotionally and fit mentally. And so, some people actually stick physical and spiritual and emotional all right in here. It's kind of like that internal piece. And so on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate the you part of this? Like that internal component of your mental, emotional, and physical health. Like, where is health here? And so where are your numbers?
We've got some good numbers, 8s and 7s and 9.5s and 10, 3. There's one low, 3, 9s and 8s. Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah. And so this one is the thing we can transactionally, again, it's similar to money in that you can focus on it, and it gives a lot. The focus on this gives you a lot of return. It's also the thing where we can self-medicate with food, sleep, alcohol, whatever, and those kind of things, or even, mental health days that are all about staring at Netflix or whatever. And there's a place for that. But also be aware of, is it adding to my overall health?
Yeah.
Is it going to give me energy? Is it going to give me the things I need in some way?
This one's such a tricky one, Mike, because on one hand, it's the one that we can somehow control a little bit more than perhaps finance or a job or, because, financial, but it's also the one that I think some of us have the most resistance to change. Going on a walk, eating healthy, because those are the creature comforts that just don't come naturally to us. I want to eat my chocolate chip cookies right now. I am stressed out. I read an article about why everyone's making banana bread and the science behind during a pandemic. And literally people are like, it's warm, it has carbs, and I don't care. I'm just making it. I'm eating it. And that's why all the flour is gone in all the grocery stores. And it's quite interesting, because it's like we need that sometimes. And I think that's the one that's so tough, because it's like, we can all eat healthy and we can all go on walks right now. You know what I mean? Well, maybe some people in certain parts can't, but I got to go surfing yesterday for the first time this season. And it's like, I literally was like almost not wanting to go because I was lazy, And so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Physical. And then I'm going to leave us in our last one. And this is the most difficult to really control right now. And so, but again, it's worth kind of focusing in on. Gallup's last one is called community. And this is about where you live. And again, we have people from all over the world on this call right now. And so the place where you live, do I like where I live? And and here's the other thing, do I feel like it's moving in the right direction? Do I like where I live? And is it moving in the right direction? Meaning safety, clean water, clean air. And it depends upon the country you're in, that has a different answer. Is that how do we see this? Because this also makes you kind of, and so where I live ties into, I would almost say group relationship in some way, like how we relate to the community around us and the people we're in. But they realize that community requires our ability to step into this. So do I like where I live? And it's moving in the right direction, meaning safe water, safe air, personal and physical safety. Is it going in the right direction?
Mike, it's a question, was socially or physically?
Say again?
Or both. Socially or physically?
Gallup actually says this, it's physically primarily, but with a little bit of social, but it's like specifically where you live. So like for me, where I live is safe enough, but there's not enough community around me. So like I live 20 miles from the place where I spend most of my time, where my friends are at. So I'm not going to put a 10 for me. It's somewhat there. Like it's safe. The water's clean. The air is clean. I don't necessarily feel connected to the community because it's just, we are very isolated where we are.
Can also be like amenities or mainly people oriented or both?
It can, again, Gallup comes back with both over and over again. Yeah. They talk about in places in the Western culture, meaning US, Canada, Europe, things like that, places that they're not, the economics are not as fragile. The answer almost always ends up being social. Internationally, clean water, clean air, and personal security end up being the questions. Nice. I mean, Abdullah, you probably talked to me about that, right? Is that like the priorities of things for people in different parts of the different sections of Kabul is going to be a different priority than for people who are in Los Angeles, right? What they decide is good for community or not. Wow. It's a different conversation.
Yeah, it's good.
Right, Abdullah?
Yeah, true. Well, concern is security. People don't care about the weather. Yeah. Like the weather is good or not, because we know the weather will be changed. Yeah. By the season, but security is the more concern, and especially like nowadays, and that's why I also give it the 5. But I guess it's also depends. I have a friend, she's living in New York. Whenever I talk with her, she says, well, there's like a gunfire, and she's hearing that. I was asking her, where is that? He says, oh, that's like 1 block away, but that is a sort of place which we may not hear that gunshots much here, but we are hearing it like in a very big sense, like a bomb blast. And that's maybe like the deathbed, but she will hear that like every day, like a gunshot, and we are hearing like, or maybe like one every day, like a bomb blast, something like that. But also like if we came to the kidnaps and all these things, maybe we will have some kidnap cases as well here. But when I'm talking with her, sometimes I have a dialogue with her. She says, oh, sometimes like the boys, they're in the streets and they're asking for money, or they're just disturbing, blah, blah, blah. But
every area has its own challenge. And so you're right, is that like the different experiences of one versus the other. And so this is why, I mean, to your point, Danny, this is why like they include community, because community it matters to us and our stability, but it also kind of fits in. So on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you where do you kind of rank yourself here, folks?
Yeah, folks were kind of saying actually lots of 9s and 10s and 7s, a couple 5s. Okay. Sean said he moved to Fresno. And so he asked if he should put a negative number. And there was a consensus that maybe he should say that. So not to put you on the spot, Sean.
Come on, Sean.
No, but yeah.
Come on.
It's relative, right? Where he moved from too. Right. So.
I mean, being born and raised in paradise and then moving to what some call the armpit of California, it was a rough move. That said, I'm still a 9. It's great.
So here's the thing, you guys. I would like you now to think about all 5. Think about purpose, relationships, financial, physical health, and community. Where are you on an overall personal well-being scale? If 10 is thriving and 1 is suffering, where are you? Give yourself an overall number. Okay? Everybody think of a number. Danny?
Yes.
Here's the thing. If you guys would give Danny the numbers, because we're gonna do something. Give Danny your numbers. Give me a count, Danny. Of just I'm gonna average these
8.5, 8.9, 7.5, 9.5, 8, 9, 7, 8.
Okay.
7.2, 8.9, 7.5, 7.5, 7.5, 7.5.
Okay.
7.2.
Okay.
Oh, Todd. Yeah. Just what do you think your overall score is?
Overall.
Just if you average it.
Your overall well-being ranking.
9.
Typically, when you do this in a room, any idea what the average score of almost every room you do this in is?
8.
It is always between 7 and 8. All right. Why? Because when we ask ourselves rank, so that's kind of where we are. It's typically 7 to 8. So actually, before I give you this next piece, as we kind of, here's the question I want you to ask yourself. Now think about this. What would have made you put yourself 2 rungs higher? What are 2 things that would have to be different for you to have put yourself 2 rungs higher? Why did you pick 7? Why did you pick 8? Why didn't you say 10? What's the thing that puts you at 7? Now you don't have to necessarily share it, but I want you to think about that. If you're brave enough to share it, you can. I'd love to hear it, and you can
better health,
share it. You don't
more
have to,
money.
type it.
Jump on.
I mean, you guys feel free to jump in. You don't have to chat it. I'd love to hear from you. But if you have something that you're like, yeah, I think this would have changed my number.
Having a job. Yes.
Right? That would be good.
I think some of it is the way you worded some of the questions. When I thought that I would put a lower number when you said the word, but then you said more like financial, do I have the resources to meet my needs? Or relationships, do I have loving relationships in my life? Whereas just the word itself, I would have taken it to a different place. Of yes, but I want more. Yes, but I feel like I need more. So the way you worded it was a really good perspective reflection of, you know what, I have more than I feel that I reflect often. Yeah.
It's good. It's good. Somebody else.
Community and financial health, peace of mind.
Yeah. Yep. The focus ends up being, and the reason why I bring this up is because one of the things we find is that when I do this exercise, the average answer in the room on overall well-being is always 7 or 9, between 7 and 8. What's interesting is because 7 puts us better than suffering, and surviving, but not quite thriving. It leaves us a gap that we can feel good about. Almost no one, in fact, I've never seen a group where I've done this, where the average answer is 4, because that's too low. The average group, we almost always put ourselves here. And the reason why that matters is because Why do you think that? Actually, I'll ask you guys, why do you think that is? Why do you think the answer is almost always 7 on a scale of 1 to 10? What puts us there? Feel free to unmute, by the way.
Todd,
Marcia,
share. Go ahead and share.
Go ahead, Todd. What do you got?
Oh,
yeah.
So I had to close the chat window to get the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's partly what we want to or not think about ourselves. We don't want to see ourselves in the gutter most of the time, and we definitely don't want to be seen in the gutter around other people, especially those that we respect and consider friends. So why, if it's a one-on-one thing, you might get lower numbers than in a group.
Yep, you might get lower numbers in a group.
And I think the other side of that same coin is that nobody wants to be seen as a braggart, and that they're showing off with their 10 either.
Yep.
You always want to show that you've got room for growth.
Yeah.
Christina, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, hey, go ahead.
Christina had a thought. I just want to see if you want to add some color commentary to it.
Yeah. I think a lot of people want to maybe blend in. They don't want to be too low or too high. Kind of what I think Sean was saying, like a 10, people might be like, oh, wow, their life is so perfect. So
yeah,
that's,
but even, so one of the things, sorry, Marcia, go ahead.
I was going to say, maybe when the way you phrase the question is kind of what Katie said, is that you do reflect on gratitude. I'm really fortunate that I have a community, I have friends, I have loving relationships. So maybe it is, sometimes we don't think of, we're always thinking of what we don't have instead of embracing what we have.
What is interesting about this piece is that when I do a one-on-one, as a general rule, it is less of, because it's a group exercise, you're right. And so you guys talked about how it reflects to the others. But ultimately, usually people will rank themselves at a 7. And my experience is one of within a 7 to 8. It puts us high enough that we don't feel bad about ourselves, but it also puts us with a stretch goal that's not too far out of our reach. We're usually on average about 2 rungs from thriving in our heads.
Yeah.
But the reality of the situation is that that's actually about us, not because we're too close to the top, but we're actually dreaming kind of too small. Is that there's this element of going, how do we actually dream bigger? And so, in fact, when we're at that place, I'm going, we always are dreaming like 2 rungs. Because again, think about this question. What are 2 things that would need to change for you to have changed those rungs? What would have taken if you were a 7? Let's imagine you're a 7. What has to be real in your life right now for you to say 10? No matter what number you're at, pick 3. What are 3 things in your life that would have made you say, I'm at a 10? And you can use these 5 areas to kind of set that, to kind of inspire you of these areas: purpose, finance, relationships, health, community, place of where I live. What 3 things would have made you say 10? Take a second, write that down for yourself. Like, make a note. Because I want to do something, and I want to do one more piece on this and kind of just open it up to kind of, as we kind of bring our last 10 minutes in.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Imagine that. Now be really clear. A job making $100,000 a year, losing weight like this, getting to be creative and starting my own company, and like whatever it is, the 3 things that would have made you say 10. Okay. Now 10 is the top of the ladder, right? It's as good as it gets. Everybody got that? Some of you have thinking themes. You require more than this, but I don't have that much time. But do the exercise after. But here's the other piece. Now, what I want you to do is, I want you to close your eyes. Imagine that you woke up this morning and those 3 things are all real. Everything that you just said that had to happen for you to be at a 10 is completely real. Now, you woke up, that's all happened, and you have another day, your life is still here. And I want you to imagine that 10 is now a 2. What would a 10 look like in this new reality? See how that works? When we are doing it ourselves, okay, open your eyes and think about this. Did your bar go up? Because you're like, wait, I just said these 3 things were my 10. Well, what happens when they become reality? What do you do after that? Like, you have a capacity for dreaming beyond the 3 rungs. But what ends up happening is we take our barrier in front of us and dream to the barrier and then stop and then get stuck. So you've got to go this, okay, if I was going to move 3 rungs on this ladder, these are the 3 things I need to focus on. Great. But then what if you dreamed past that? What if you set a goal beyond those pieces? But most people will have vision. This gives you a starting place to say, wait a minute, I know what I need to work on. Because I'm just going to start by moving myself 3 rungs up this ladder and then moving the ladder in a different way. And so they call this an intuitive fence. There's a great book called Endure that talks about the fact that it's nearly, at this point, it has been impossible for human beings to measure their max capacity physically in physical competition with regards to running, water, speed, going without water, sugar, because what they found is the human brain always stops you before you actually reach breaking point. Mm-hmm. We do this with vision too. We have vision for our lives to a certain point and it stops us. And most of us are dreaming at a 7, trying to get to a 10, not realizing that we could actually double that 10 and go further. But we don't know where to start. And so when I'm working with clients, I will often start with well-being to help give language and target to get them to dream past 7. Does that make sense? Danny, you getting comments out there a little bit?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I think a lot of folks were saying that they're grateful that this exercise helped them do some self-reflection on what they actually have. I think that's the first piece. It's like, it gives you a perspective of actually where you are. Yeah, exactly. And gives you some space to think about that. And then I think it's interesting because I think, to your point about vision, I think sometimes our vision gets chopped off at the knees because we don't want to dream too far. We don't want to give ourselves permission to dream too far, because that means that there's a greater gap of failure or a greater gap of disappointment. And I think that's an interesting reality. However, I think to your point, like, you know, always thinking about kind of taking it to the next level or going beyond what is possible, I think is a huge thing. You know, Matt has a question, Mike. Mike, what did you call it? Intellectual fence? Oh, yeah. Can you talk a little bit? Oh, intuitive fence. Yes.
The intuitive fence is that we think we know. We think that we think we know the boundaries for ourselves.
Yes.
And what we don't realize is that that's because if you hear me talk at all, you'll hear me say this quite a bit, that we take our brain and trying to make sense of the future, assesses our reality based on our past. A brain trying to make sense of the future assesses our current possibility based on our past experience. Mm-hmm. And so when we pull our past into our present, it becomes our future because we only have evidence of things we haven't done well. And so some of you have heard me say before, repeatedly, I will say that, you know, I'm the guy, I've had to be honest with myself that I will talk myself out of things. I will say things like, oh, I don't get clients virtually. I don't get clients. Well, that's because I haven't yet gotten clients virtually. So it doesn't mean I can't get clients virtually. It means that I haven't yet had an experience. But if I assume that I haven't done something before and I bring it to the present, I start to act as if it's true in the future. I start to act like my past is my present. And so we change our perspective. And so part of these exercises is to let us know that we don't know what we think we know. We don't really, our boundaries are bigger than that. Our vision can go beyond that. And so one of the things in the last few minutes we've got here is that I want to lay out for you something that I do with clients now in the 7 minutes I've got. just to kind of frame this, is that as you pick, these are the targets. These are the 3 areas that I want to move towards in my life, is that the next step then is to create a vision of what you want. What would 10 look like? Or what would what I call the new 10 look like? And that could be around health, money, whatever that looks like. But here's the good news. We set a vision, but the next thing you have to do then is you have to inspect reality.
Mike, should we be seeing your screen?
No. Yeah, actually,
Okay,
wait a minute. I'll reshare. Sorry. Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
call. Sorry, we didn't share. New Max. Okay.
Perfect.
There we go. So vision versus reality. So we set a vision, but then we need to be able to kind of focus in on say, what is reality? Like truly looking hard at what is my current reality. Man, I really want to have more money and more resource. Okay, but how much is your current savings? I want to be able to climb a mountain, but I can't walk around the block. So we love vision. The problem is that as soon as we set a vision, we have this. Between vision and reality is a gap. A gap. And we hate gaps in our life. So there's 3 ways. So the good news, we set a vision. The bad news is the vision is higher than our reality. So then we go, okay, gosh, I can't have a gap. I can't have too big of a gap, which is why I picked 7. I need to close that gap. So there's 3 ways to close this gap. There's 3 ways. I can close the gap by lowering my vision. Well, I didn't really want to get debt free. See, I lowered it down. I didn't really want to lose 100 pounds. I didn't really want to apply for a new job. I just wanted a little better aspect at my current job. So the first thing you can do is you can lower your vision, or you can inflate reality. You know what? Anybody ever gone to their bank account and found more money in it than you expected? Probably not. Because you always tell yourself that there's more money in the account than you think. You go to the ATM and you're like, oh, wait, I can spend this, because you're spending the same dollar 3 times. You inflate your reality in some ways, okay? And so you can close the vision gap by lowering your vision. You can also inflate reality, or there's 2 other ways. You can do the hard work it takes to build step-by-step closure between the 2, but it's hard and it's ugly and it's exhausting. Or you know what? You can make the gap go away with Netflix or food or fill in the blank. So the reason we don't step in to vision usually is because we don't like the gap. And so this reality for us is, how do we learn to go, the gap is okay. Gap is good. It means that you're dreaming. But most of us won't set vision deep enough that there's actually a gap between the 2, because we've been taught that gaps are bad.
Yeah.
So we don't push big enough. We don't dream big enough. And so my question to you this week is that if you are not okay with a gap in your life, 1, it means you're not setting vision enough. Like the vision's not high enough, because we're not going to be setting that. But 2, if you're not okay with that for yourself, we're definitely not going to do it with our teams. We're definitely not going to do it with others. People we're leading, people we're coaching. How do we get good at this gap? Because we need to pick the 3 things that would change the course of our life, and then go, and I need to take my reality and kind of connect it to my vision. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Good. Todd made a great point. He asked the question, could this perspective say growth is more important than contentment? And what I hear you saying is that gap is actually growth. Yes. If there's no gap, there's no growth.
Right.
When there's a gap, that's an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity to build the ladder. It's an opportunity to lean in, to say, what am I missing? What is my vision? And do I have a big enough vision? And am I looking at reality correctly?
And to Todd's point, how do I relate to this? Because think of this. Most of us feel guilty. I remember my first book, I wouldn't tell anyone I was writing a book because I was afraid that I might not finish it. And so the gap of me saying, I'm going to write a book, and the reality being that I might not do it, the gap was too scary. But think of it. So I feel fear in that kind of a gap. I'm not patient with myself. But when you start a PhD, you don't start your first day of class and go, my gosh, why aren't I finished? Like, think about school. When you start your first day of class, you know it's going to take you years and you're patient. But when it comes to personal vision that's in our hands, we berate, we shame ourselves. Why are we not further ahead? Why are we not better? Instead of going, look, incremental growth, one step at a time, one thing at a time. And so that ends up being the critical piece. I think Todd captures it. Growth is going to be more important than contentment. And so we need to have a vision, but I would suggest start with these 5 categories, pick the 3, and then start talking about what is my vision for that, what's my reality, and then how do I begin to take steps to close those gaps? Is this a good start for you guys? Is this okay? We're going to kind of operationalize this a little bit the next week and move more into culture and relationship and how we relate to things, specifically how we relate to the gap in our lives and what that means for the team. But having Danny here is a huge benefit to this. So thank you, Danny, so much.
Yeah, thank
for being
you.
a part of
Thank
this.
you all for having me here.
Thanks, you guys. Bring a friend next time. Jump in same time next week if you're cool with that. Does that sound good?
Great. See you all.
Thanks, Mike. This was great.
Thanks, Marsha.
Thanks, Mike and Danny. Appreciate it.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks, Matt.
As always, good stuff.
Thanks, Todd.
Thanks all.
And all my Cobble crew. Martinez joined in a
Thank
little
you,
bit late.
sir. It was good.
Thanks, guys. See you next week. Take care. Hola, Martinez. He's on mute. He's still in there someplace.
He's on mute. Thank you, man.
He's there. Thanks, guys. Be safe. Be well.
Lagos.